Good afternoon and welcome to today's webinar, Accelerating Business Growth. My name is Manel Issa from CCIQ and I'm your facilitator for today. Alongside me, I'm delighted to welcome Pink Bamboo Business Growth's Adam Frampton. So in our businesses, we go through some clearly defined stages, from the excitement of the early days through to the anxiety of those first big decisions. The confidence that consistent growth and profit brings through to the stresses created moving to the next level. During today's webinar, Adam will map the journey, showing how we can predict with some degree of clarity what the next steps will bring. So understanding what's to be reviewed and implemented in each cycle of growth facilitates a consistent, managed growth at a speed of your choosing. So just a couple of tips from today's session. We'll be online for about 40 minutes, and following the main presentation there will be an opportunity for some questions and answers. Please feel free to send through those questions at any time during the presentation through to Adam using the text box on your screen. And at the end of the presentation, we'll collate these and Adam will be able to answer as many as we can get through today. So following on from that, we'll also email you a copy of the presentation with any links and additional supporting information that we come across, so make sure you check your inboxes. On that note, I will hand over to Adam, who will take you through today's webinar, Accelerating Business Growth. Thanks so much, Adam.
Great, thank you, Manel, and hello to everybody out there, and good afternoon. Yeah, so I really want to start today just by giving a bit of a background to who I am, just so you can see, and obviously you can see on the screen some of the elements of that. I am an entrepreneur at heart. My background, qualified accountant for many years, and formed, grew, and then exited 2 professional service businesses. I currently work as a business growth specialist. I love everything about how businesses grow, how teams grow in businesses, and I deploy some of my experience from being an accountant in forming and running my own businesses to help other people rediscover their confidence to grow in business. Essentially what I do is to educate people, to support an education around what businesses do to grow. Most business owners will start because they have a skill, they employ that and say they want to become self-employed, so what I do is to support that business development side. So Pink Bamboo, it's a business which essentially is focused on business growth. The pivotal framework from inside that is what I call the journey. So it's a cycling business that everyone goes through. I deploy that and work with startups, family businesses, smaller businesses, and teams inside of larger businesses. So for today's webinar, really, as you can see, it's more of an introduction to some of the growth tools and techniques that I use. It would be impossible for me to cover in great depth everything that I do, but really what I wanted to do is give a flavour and hopefully support added perspective so you can gain some new choices, maybe inspire a few questions and get some sort of dialogue going for yourselves. The big thing that underpins everything I do, the 2: action and accountability. Most people come along to seminars, come to my workshops, go to various different educational seminars, and 90 to 95% of them won't actually take any action afterwards. They may have had some great insights during the presentations, but the big blocker is action. And I put with that accountability. So I'd encourage you to consider what action points you might take from this, even if they're just questions you want to take to somebody else, and who you might get to hold you accountable to those. The seminar itself, or the webinar itself, ideal for businesses who clearly want to grow and feel stuck. And the key at the bottom here is maybe you want better profit, better work-life balance, and reduce stress. Because, as Manel said at the beginning, we go through phases in business, and a small business is different to a corporate, and the difference is the F word, feelings. To a corporate, if you're a CEO of a Fortune 500 company, if you're made redundant, you move on, you take your package and you go and get a job elsewhere. For a smaller business or anything that isn't corporate, not being able to be inside your business, or if you're removed from your business, is a bit like taking the baby away. So feelings and how you feel along the journey actually dictates how we interact, how we can actually, and how efficiently we can grow our businesses or make the choices that we need to make. And I will come on to that a bit later, because not everyone wants to grow, and growth means different things to different people. So specific topics, I'm going to whiz through these now. In essence, the business growth and the journey are three elements that form the stages of how businesses grow. So the foundations, growth, and then transition, and then a very brief introduction to what I call business DNA. It's what sits in the heart of every single business, and if you have those 5 key elements of DNA clear, then every single step you take has added traction. And as you can see, the considerations we look at that is an acknowledgement. This is a massive subject. Never going to cover everything in half an hour, and no two businesses are the same. So even if you're in a similar industry, similar size, similar location as to someone else, your problems and your series of blockages or enablers are going to be different. So for everyone out there that's looking for a silver bullet, bad news is there is no silver bullet. Nothing is going to be the quick fix. So let's get on. So business growth. You'll see business growth from various commentators out there described as a graph of increasing revenue as time goes on. And then the extension of that's what you're looking at in front of you here, which is a staged growth model. And that model consists of a number of different facets. The flat areas where businesses seem to go into stagnation, which can feel very uncomfortable, but let's just go with that for the time being, are called foundation spaces. So they're the flat areas where actually what needs to happen is you need to be building something to then grow from. So it's a platform of growth. Then we have the zones in this journey which are increasing. So it's increasing revenue or profit if you choose to use that as a measure. So that's where the business moves to growth. And then the other areas are the transitions between them. So I call them pivot points. And actually, they're probably the most fundamental areas of this journey. So the business growth journey, in its most efficient form, capitalizes and makes the most of those pivot points. So there you see foundation, growth, and pivot points. We will go into each of these areas in slightly more depth as we go through the slides, but if you just bear this slide in mind, and what we do at each of those stages of the journey are entirely different. And what you will notice is that I use red, amber, or orange and green. So to me and the way I work with my clients, red is stop. So stop, build systems, get ready for the next stage, build whatever needs to be built to grow. The amber, the transition is we're moving from stop to go, or from go to stop. So what do we need to do to reposition? And then green is clearly everything is down to growth. So the business journey, I tend to use, and I use this rather simplistic model. It seems simplistic on the face of it. It's a bit like a clock. So as, again, Manel mentioned at the beginning, there are 4 really core phases of how it feels to be on your business journey. And if we start the journey from the top, from 12 o'clock on this, clearly you're in a green zone, which is a very exciting phase. So the early stages building up to launch, and just after, when we're in the launch phase, feels very exciting. Yeah, there's a bit of nervousness, a bit of trepidation, but essentially it's a positive energy. Feels very, very exciting. Then we move past the sort of 1:30 position into anxious. Now, as businesses grow, you'll get to a point where you need to do something slightly different to continue growth. And this can feel like a very anxious period of time. The critical point there is the 3 o'clock position, which is where it's at its greatest anxiety. And I just need to explain this journey here isn't a binary feeling journey, so you won't flip literally from excited to anxious over one day and it's fully on. You would actually blend from one to the other. And a big acknowledgement is there are hundreds more feelings and hundreds more stages that go around this journey that you'll feel on the way. And these are the overriding feelings as you go through. So anxious is 3 o'clock, and that's usually coincides with I need to make a choice inside my business. It's a choice where I need to do something to grow, but actually that choice feels quite big. So if you're a sole trader, you're on your own, it may be I need to employ someone there, which is a pretty large decision for any small business to make. As you grow and as it's bigger, it might be a team moving from one office to a bigger office, or buying that extra piece of machinery or equipment, which just feels too big a jump. And this is actually the first sticking point on this, where if that decision isn't made properly, or if the commitment isn't there, you don't actually move forward. Then we keep rocking around. We'll move from that, once the investment is made into the business, to confidence, where you leverage that choice and you're really monetizing it. And then as we go past the 6 o'clock position, now the 6 o'clock, 12 o'clock line is a line of commitment. At the top, it's a choice. At the bottom, it doesn't feel like a choice and is often missed. And the confidence will turn into a bit of overconfidence. And then as things cease, and we'll go back to the business journey in a second, as things cease to be as efficient, what you find is things get a bit more frustrating. The choices you're making, which are the ones you've made through that confidence zone where money is coming in quite well, the choices you seem to make don't seem to have the same effect. And it can be quite frustrating, which inevitably leads to this point at about 9 o'clock, where stress builds, and it can be a bit of a crash. And another sticking point now. The left-hand side of this journey is very negative and feels negative, but the right-hand side of the journey feels very positive. Moving through stress, what happens is we can become a bit lost, and then eventually we find our way through that and then start to rebuild back into the excited phase, and so it goes on. What we tend to find is you'll go through this journey, through those phases of growth which we saw a moment ago, back there, and you'll go through the phases at the same time. So there is a correlation in how that feels. When a business becomes stuck, or if there are more problems inside the business, it's usually when there's a disconnect between the action you're taking and what naturally should be happening inside the business. So what I've done here is I'm not going to go through this in depth, but essentially that's exactly the same journey we talked about. The launch, monetizing. The launch to monetize phase, that line at 130 is actually where a business either achieves break even, if it's a new business, or you've achieved an amount of income which might complement or equal, if you come out of a job, that salary, so the feeling changes. This is essentially how businesses grow. One of the key factors of this is you can see backwards where you've been because you've experienced that phase. Generally, we can't see forwards as to what the next stage is because you haven't experienced it yet. And the question I'm commonly asked at this point is, if you've been around the journey once before, surely you'd see what was coming. To a certain degree, yes, but actually no, because on each stage of growth, as the business grows, each stage looks different. So the problems you face at 3 o'clock when we get to the anxious phase will be different to the previous journey through. So each stage is different. What I've done on this slide, just for reference for the future, we won't go into it in great depth again, is just to give my contextual view of what actions and what stages on the business growth journey actually ally with each of the phases on this. Now, this is not a comprehensive answer. As I said before, there's no one answer, but what this does is it gives us an indication, if we know where you are on this journey, to say what should you be doing in your business, or what is the optimum series of actions that you would take to help move forward. And clearly, most people want to be in the growth and accelerate phase. So in Bamboo, we help people rediscover their confidence to grow, which is essentially that bottom phase. There we go. So I'm going to cover each of those three just in broad terms: foundation, growth, and pivot. Just to say what might sit inside that, because it's all very well us looking at that model and saying we've got an idea of what we need to do. But really what I want to do is just show you the elements of each stage, so there's something that you can be considering. Because if you're adopting the wrong things on time, business growth won't be as efficient as it could be. Foundation stage. The 5 areas of this But of those 5 areas, the main ones are the system building, because we need to know where we're going with plan and build. We need the structure of the business right for each stage of growth. It needs to be correct. And valuation, I'll talk with in a minute. Essentially, you need the systems built ready for your next stage of growth. So the example I commonly give here is if you're a 1 million turnover business and you're looking to build to 5 million, if your systems have got you to 1 million in revenue, they're unlikely to be able to hold you to 5 million. You need to change those systems, both revenue systems and support. Equally, structure and the plan needs to account for that as well. And the same applies from startup through to 250,000 turnover. And all of these steps apply right the way up to pre-corporate, so it could be 400 or 500 million turnover. So valuation, interesting one here. Why do we need to know about valuation at this point? Well, valuation we need to know because actually it's a very important measure to see if you're doing something in your business in your system, what's it going to be worth after you've done that? What effect does it have on valuation? Now, for some of you, your businesses are businesses which generate a revenue for you, and maybe that's less important, but I would always actually just consider that, because most people are sitting in their businesses with a bunch of processes and IP and constructs, the way you do something, which have incredible value, and sometimes this actually reveals what they are. And you move into building the revenue and profit alongside some asset value, so it has a value when you can sell, if that is your choice. Clearly, implementation of systems is critical for the next stage, and I've referred to the business DNA there because essentially, and we'll come to this, business DNA, which I refer to a lot, is what sits underneath the business right the way through the growth journey, but we'll talk about that in a minute. So moving on, the next stage, revenue. So this isn't about building a system, this is about implementation. So if we go back to foundation, what we're looking at there is understanding why you're doing something and understanding what you need to do and building a system. This is about, we're now looking to grow to actually leverage what you built, and there are 5 elements that I will play with in terms of implementing. So conversion is selling. So I sell more to the people I already have as clients, and I sell what I've already got as a product. Channels, that's where you're selling the same product or service to a different group of people, so you're extending the channels to whom you sell, your clients. Outputs, product or services is my definition of that's outputs. And that's selling a different product, so you've extended your product, something new, to your current clients. So clearly building a revenue that way. Diversification is a combination of channels and outputs, which is you're selling something new to an entirely different audience, which is clearly a higher risk. And then we move down to acquisition, which is deployed as a strategic choice. You're a larger business looking to move into state or to a different town. Now, I rank those in order of risk, generally speaking. Now, risk is a big subject, which we're not going to go into today, but largely selling more to your existing clients, selling more of what you already do, is less risk than clearly going and buying another business somewhere in the state. So you'll find the bigger the business, the more likely they are to make some of the choices further down. And it's absolutely, the business is geared during the growth phase to building revenue. As I put there again, it must consider profitability, because we've heard revenue is vanity and profit is sanity. I'd rather improve the efficiency of my business to build profit and to build revenue. So it's absolutely focused there. Now for the important bit of this journey. So transitioning from one to the other, again, it's a very big area, but largely, if I look at it textually, it's how do we move from one phase to another, from foundation to growth, or from growth to foundation. Now I'm going to give you the analogy of a car traveling along the M1. If you're traveling at 110 k's and you want to turn left, what you do not do is just turn your steering wheel left. You have to slow down, you have to prepare, you have to change a lot of things inside the car, make a lot of judgments before you turn left. This is exactly the same. What we're doing during this phase to ensure the efficacy or the leverage the best result in the next phase is to make sure the business, which is a very complex system, is ready for that shift. So we'll look at the cash flow situation in the business. What effect is that shift going to have? Organisation I use, which is your organisation in terms of people in your business. Who does what role? How do they perform those functions? And what does it look like at the end of the next phase of growth? And how do we get there? So we're starting to piece the pieces together to make the next phase of growth the most efficient, or indeed resourcing to the next foundation stage. And there's the system or business shift, which is the literal translation of we're now moving from we've grown dramatically and now we're consolidating, or we're consolidating in foundation and now we're looking to grow. Develop and measure. Develop is more about your competency inside the business, and that's not an offensive term. Essentially, we have skills as a business and skills as people inside the business to be able to do the things you need to do at the level you're aiming at. We measure those competencies, with our business competency, we can really ensure what do we need to do next to get the most growth, the most leverage, or to make the most of the foundation stage. And measure is what are your key performance indicators? How are we actually looking at this to see what, with the choices we're making, what effect that's actually having on the business? So it's a critical one, and there are thousands of measures. Summary there, it is an essential piece of this puzzle. It's often missed, because often we assume we can switch from one to the other, and everything must be in place relative to the size of business you're looking to get to. And I'm just going to actually apply this to businesses who don't actually want to necessarily grow in terms of size, but just want to be more efficient. The same is true. What do all of those things look like in a business that is more efficient than you believe you currently are? And as I say time and time again, it's about creating choice so you can make the right choice to move forward. So just understanding or considering those 5 elements of transition is very important. So business DNA, I actually get very excited about this, and one reason or another. You can see by the model there, there's 5 elements. Now, all of the work I do, and we do it in Bamboo, inside a business, falls into 5 systems in business. So we have the revenue system, which I use as green. We have the support systems, which is everything you do inside a business, which supports revenue. So that's HR, IT, legal, what have you. And then the red is the strategic function. So smaller businesses don't necessarily look at strategy until they're looking to grow. And then the other 2, which are the foundation pieces, are the people system, how we communicate, how we fit inside the system, how we are as people in the business, and then the culture, which is the other bedrock. So essentially this model, which shows, again, what I call business DNA, which runs through the whole of the growth cycle, it's about, my keyword here is balance. So if I look at this and I do an exercise with a business, I'm looking at these 5 areas, and I'll explain the top 3 in a second, and I'm looking at what balance or imbalance is there, and what do we need to do to accelerate growth, to move to where you want to be. So I'll quickly go through the 3 at the top. So identity is around how does the marketplace see your business? Do they understand what you do and how you do it? Do they see the value from your business? So what is your identity to the world? And a lack of clarity on that can actually lead you to bring in clients or customers who aren't ideal for you or for them. And whereas a laser focus on where you sit in the market will actually attract clients to you and customers. Vision does what it says on the tin. Always put it in there. That's where are you headed? Now, vision is an overused term. I will occasionally use the term choice point, because a choice point is a closer reference point, which is where you're aiming to get to. The initial stages of work I do with clients, what does 12 months look like? What's the vision for 12 months' time? And then we can start piecing together how you're going to get there. Clarity of your vision gives you pinpoint focus on where the business is headed. And again, that's a choice. It doesn't have to be we all want to be multi-billionaires and sell out to Google. It can be any choice you have, but getting clarity is the key. And lastly, experience. So experience is how do you, with your business, how do you set the expectations in the world, or what expectations are being set for your clients, your customers, staff internally, and What does that mechanism look like? You get really clear on how you set those expectations, then that gives a weight of clarity to the people inside the business, and also it matches with identity on this. So you'll see how this line tracks around and what connects to it. The two at the bottom I don't tend to go into in great detail for this webinar, but largely they're the two foundations. So there's a little taster of business DNA. So my closing thoughts on this journey. So being in business is being on a journey. Like it or not, that's the case. The model at the beginning shows overriding feelings as you go through. It does not account for, I wake up one morning and I won the lotto, therefore I'm excited, but I shouldn't be excited because apparently I'm stressed. That's a different dynamic. It's the overriding feeling inside the business. So if the business is anxious, it's going through a choice of what it wants to do to invest to grow. And you're never going to start any journey without knowing where you're going. So the same would apply to going on holiday. You're unlikely, unless you're incredibly adventurous, to walk out your front door on a Wednesday morning with 2 bags packed to go on holiday not knowing anything about where you're going. It's the same in a business. And that goes for vision or choice points as much as it goes for what does the end for your business look like. So what is the last day of business? Are you selling? Is that what you're building towards? Or is it something else? One of the current things we're seeing at the moment is with the GFC, a lot of people held off selling their businesses. And we're actually closing in on a looming influx of sales of businesses, which is what it says. A lot of baby boomers and ex-gens are looking to get out for the next couple of years. And that has a big bearing on any of you businesses out there that want to grow your value to sell, to exit. So that's a big consideration, and a lot of conversations in that space at the moment. Big thing next, everyone should get some form of support. Doesn't matter what that support is, as long as it's the right support for you and your business. And there are business coaches, consultants, your accountant, professional advisors. Absolutely get as much support and information as you can. And the big hint here is build a team of people around you who can either mentor you, support you, who know each other or can work together for your best interests. And they should all understand what you want from the business, because I see it far too many times where someone comes in to help and their agenda is they want you to grow, whereas yours might be, I'm happy where I am, just make me more efficient, give me my life back, give me a better balance. So anyone that's helping you should understand what you truly want from the business, rather than coming in and telling you what you should be doing. All of my workshops that I run and all of my work with clients, all of my clients will know I use key learnings dramatically. So what I really want you to do is just consider the 3 things that put in the sheet. If I've learned something during this seminar, even if it's just a question or you're considering something slightly differently, just write down what have you taken from this webinar and everything else you do in an educational space. Next, how do I apply these learnings? So again, action and accountability, you'll hear that a lot from me. Action is, what am I actually going to do with it? Because it's one thing learning something, but if 90% of the people listening here don't action anything, then largely that's a problem. So how do I apply these? And then who can I ask to hold me accountable? And that can be a colleague, it can be external. The accountability piece actually means you're holding yourself accountable, you're allowing someone to hold you accountable to do something. Now my journey through this with my accounting practice, when I came through on that initial model to the stress space, my crash was pretty spectacular. And one Friday afternoon, held up in fetal position under my desk, blubbing because pressure had got to me, and then what I thought at the time was a heart attack. So some of these things, the feeling journey, has a profound effect on us as individuals, and we can feel very alone. The reality is everyone goes through the same phases, not necessarily to the same time. So if I'm asking for help from somebody, I want somebody who has at least an idea of what does that journey look like and feel like to me as a human being. So really that's my summary of, and it's a really small overview of all of the areas of business growth and how things work. Really pass it over to you guys to see if you've got any questions, because I've acknowledged that this has been quite a whiz through of a lot of content.
Fantastic. So I might just chime in there. Thanks so much, Adam. You've kept it really brief, which is great to see, but obviously we've just started to touch the surface on a few things. The questions are coming through thick and fast. Please note that we will try to get through as many as we can, but we will also be able to take a couple of these offline, and Adam can get back to you directly on a few of them. Now, the first one I wanted to combine a couple from a few different people in respect to the best approach for owner-operators. So, every business doesn't follow a traditional business format. What are some tips or some suggestions you can provide, in particular for organisations that don't necessarily adhere to that business DNA star? They only perhaps have a triangle with a few of the different elements left out. What are some suggestions there for their best approach?
Absolutely, and it's a very common question. My passion is for small business, so I work with owner-operators and I work with small businesses a lot of the time. So absolutely, I would get really clear on what you truly want from the business. One, overall, I ask the question, what's your vision? So get really clear on what you want from the business and set those targets and aim at those. Get really clear in them. I'm going to make an assumption that you know what you're doing in terms of technically what you do in your business. So if you're really clear with that, how does the market see you? So the identity piece is the key for me. Does your potential client base know exactly what you do and how you do it, why you do it, and what you do when you're doing it? So it's really clear focus on that. So if they understand those questions and are really clear about it. So the example I'd use is if you went to Jetstar, you're not expecting 100% service. You're expecting I can get them from A to B, cheapest. Equally, if you went to Singapore Airlines, you're looking at so get very clear on the identity of the market and understand the steps between now and what your vision is. So what do you need to do next? Sales and marketing is often used as, well, surely, all businesses my business is different, I need to just get out and sell. Absolutely. Know what you're selling and know why someone will want to buy. A lot of this other stuff is peripheral. If you know why someone wants to buy and you're in front of the right market, you're away. And make sure that you support, because one of the biggest problems is when a sole trader or an owner-operator runs out of time, because you haven't got time to do the admin stuff, to do the billing, to do the invoicing, to do all that other stuff, and you want to be out there doing what you do to earn money. Get the right solution to support you. We see it as a cost, but actually paying money to invest in someone to support you there will give you time to get out and actually do the work you want to do. So that's probably a couple of the initial points I'd say to understand.
Great, thanks so much. The next question I have is just around business coaching in general. Some people approach the industry with a bit of trepidation. I know there's some bit of a negative reputation out there. Can you give any tips to the best way to engage a good business coach? What makes a good business coach? How can you trust someone, to accelerate your business growth, taking those first steps?
Absolutely, it's a common facet of my work when I can bump into people who've either had a negative experience or an experience which hasn't matched their expectations. There are no barriers to entry as a business coach, so I could be out there working as maybe someone on the land and decide that I want to be a business coach, and I will bring skills to that. So what I would suggest is that you find somebody that has actually started, formed, exited or run a business for a period of time and understands what being an entrepreneur is. If they have experience in your industry, that's a great added bonus. If somebody works from a series of steps, so here's the plan to move you forwards, I would be very wary. And whilst that has value, and I would never discredit that, I'd want to know that my answer for me and my business was bespoke to me rather than you're here so you do this next. And make sure you match with the person, because that credibility in the world of, what have they actually done, what is their pedigree, and which areas they specialize in is going to be key. So if I was just an accountant, and I mean that in a respect of that was my core specialism only, then I'm going to be undoubtedly the best person to deal with the tax, the structural implications, accounting and so forth. But if you throw me into a culture space, am I going to be able to support you? And when I said about balance with DNA, getting the right balance of advice is key. And the right person now isn't necessarily the right person later. And I will actually disengage with clients a mutual agreement when I know I'm not the right person to take them forward. So a business looking to sell in an IPO, looking to float, I'm not the right person for the job, so on and so forth. So I'd say that's the key. And unfortunately, the industry is unregulated, so there are a lot of pitfalls you can fall into.
A couple of other questions from a few different listeners as well that I just wanted to combine. In particular, any support or recommendation you could give around the practice of implementing some goals? Do you have any documentation or information that displays as a bit of an easy read for some solutions for planning business goals for the organisation?
Yeah, absolutely. I summarise in the way I work with. Well, I would call that project management in my language, but essentially, yes, I can pull together, and maybe we can share that with everyone who's been on the webinar. I use 5 steps for how we do that, and largely it's about running through what is it you're aiming at, what are the steps you're going to take to get there, and then what are the blockers to stop you achieving that. And then some functional steps. So do this, do this, do this. And a big element to this is, as an entrepreneur, when I was running my business, I knew everything about the business. And if I could show you my inverted commas when I'm saying this, smile, I was the only person that could do it. So therefore I had to make choices. And actually the resources of people around you are key in this to help you, because they'll see things you don't. But absolutely we can share a bit of a help sheet on that if anyone wants it.
Great. And just time for one more question. The question just is in regards to, the standard process to engage with you, any parameters around the type of business, any information that they should be providing to you to engage with you directly for some work or support.
Yeah, absolutely. So for me, the main starting point is for me just to have a chat with someone, because again, I will never pigeonhole. So sometimes a brief conversation on the phone or a one-to-one chat is a good starting point. What I do is I don't do many of these. Is I do what's called a discovery session. Actually, it fits on the next slide that I'll show you in a minute. A discovery session is an hour face-to-face or over the internet, and to really understand maybe the one thing that's keeping you awake at night about your business, one big blockage. So we discover what it is, analyze it, and actually give you a solution. So even if that's the only contact we have, you come away with a solution to that. I only do 3 or 4 of those in a week, and it's $97. But generally, a relationship with a client, and I do limit the clients I work with, but the relationship with the client starts with what's an assessment of the business now, from every one of the aspects we've spoken about. Where are you? What do you need? And then we move into, okay, so what's the plan moving forwards, and what level of support do you need from me? Because not everyone needs me or someone like me to be there holding their hand the whole way through, and other businesses do. So it's get in touch. I'm really happy to have a conversation with anyone. Clearly, if you've been on the CCIQ webinar, I'm happy to chat, go into depth on any of the areas here, and then we can discuss what it might look like for you, because everyone's different. And I adapt to you to get you the outcome you want. Does that help?
Yeah, fantastic. So I did have a couple of requests like that. What we might do is pass those through virtually, and Adam, feel free to follow up with those directly. For now, that's unfortunately all we have time for in terms of the questions. There are a couple of others, but as I said, we can take these ones offline and respond back to you. On behalf of CCIQ, Adam, I really just wanted to thank you so much for joining us today to take us through the presentation. I know you've got one more slide. It sort of is a great segue into part of the partnership that we're working on. So I'd love to leave you to talk through that.
Absolutely, yeah. I'll just quickly, the discovery session I just spoke about, so it's an investment in something. You do take value away from that, great value away from that, and it's a bit of a leverage into what I do and how I do it. And the business growth program actually is an easy access point for smaller businesses. I tend to get a dozen businesses in the room, and we do 6 days of workshops covering the 5 areas of the business and then a bit about the growth journey, but in more depth and about your business. So it's not a generic run through, it's actually what's happening in your business to drive that. It's run over 3 months, and you can see the investment there for that. It's actually a good entry point for smaller businesses. And then the CCIQ Pink Bamboo Growth Taster sessions. So we're running a series of those over the coming months, and they will fill up quickly. Traditionally, that sort of thing does. There's no cost other than an investment of your time and a commitment to run the process, because it would go into more depth what we have gone through today, just to give you a bit more. And I'm really happy for anyone. My mobile number is there. I'm always happy to talk. If you would like a longer conversation, an appointment with Michelle, you'll see her email address is there. I'll be happy to chat. There are other options, but I think they were the first three, and the relationship with CCIQ and helping the members was prime for that, to give as much information as possible to help.
Fantastic. Once again, Adam, thanks so much for joining us today. For all of those listening in, we thank you for your time, and hopefully you found this webinar very rewarding. We'll send you some follow-up information with this presentation, and also the information on your screen now. Otherwise, thank you so much. My name's Manel Issa from CCIQ, and I look forward to welcoming you to the next webinar. Thanks.